Three things that are on the table right now
Uh,
and being considered as soon as the administration takes place. One is the end of citizenship birthrights, the mass deportations, and the end of CBP One. How are you seeing those impacting the migrant community?
yeah, the end of birthright citizenship, I would think that would be the most difficult to actually implement just because of the 14th Amendment makes it pretty clear that if you're born in the country, you're a U.S. citizen. And this has been something the courts have litigated and gone over for hundreds of years. It used to be, initially, they said this only applied to white and black populations, but later courts said no, this applies in general if you're born in the country. So I think that's going to be, you can't pass a law or an executive order getting rid of birthright citizenship. Now, if the courts are so aligned with Trump's initiative that they somehow, in my opinion, just completely distort the 14th Amendment and go through loopholes to try to say it doesn't count, they could try that. But I think that is largely a distraction. I don't think that's going to happen. Of course, who knows how corrupt the courts could be in supporting that. The end of CBP One app and mass deportations, I think Trump does have a lot more power to actually implement those. And specifically about the app, it seems to me that that's going to be something they're going to end right away. I hope that's not the case. I think it'd be a really foolish thing to do because in a lot of ways the app has actually caused things to calm down quite a bit at the border because people, even if they have to wait 7 or 8 months, more people are waiting to go through the app instead of just crossing the river. But if they get rid of the app, there's no incentive. There's really no incentive to wait at all. And so it's ironically going to increase border crossings, the very thing that Trump has been railing against. I will say that I talked to, I'm not going to say the name of the senator's office, but I talked to a senator's office, and one of his aides said off the record, this is a Republican senator, that if Trump had come up with the app, we would probably keep it. And so I hope that they realize that just from a security perspective, just from an order perspective, it makes a lot of sense to keep the app in place because without it, that's in some ways the only path right now to legally seek asylum. And if they get rid of that, it's going to be, there's no incentive, and it's going to be really a gift to organized crime because that's going to be the only way that people are going to be able to enter is with organized crime.
I was just going to ask you. I mean, they're looking at reinstating the Romanian Mexico policy.
Yeah, I think that would be a really, I mean, against international law, against U.S. Policy. And it's what we saw the first time with Romanian Mexico. It'd be one thing if there was actually a safe place to stay in Mexico and then you had a court case that they legitimately heard your claims, but it was just a kangaroo court. And so I think people would catch on to that very quickly. I think the first time it was so new, so few people actually got court dates. And there was this hope that there was going to be a change in administration, that some people still did come to the border and start the process. But if they set it up in a way where it's really just a trick or a smoke screen, and they say, wait in Mexico, you're going to wait for 9 months, and then we're going to bring you over to a quick court date on the other side with a judge on Zoom, and they're going to deny your case. It's not even, it's going to basically end asylum with like having this kind of false image that there's still some process. So I think in the end, that's going to just cause the same thing where it's the only way to migrate or seek asylum is going, or not seek asylum, the only way to migrate is going to be to go through the cartels.
And if I recall right, back when Romanian Mexico was in place, basically lots of kidnappings, assaults, and I mean just a lot of crime against the migrants. Do you foresee that as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to just cause that to explode. And I mean, obviously that's happened a lot over the last couple of years as well. But I think the amount of deaths that you're going to see, both on the Mexican side, but maybe even more so on the U.S. side, because they're going to be creating this, militarized state. So to cross, you're going to have to go through more and more rural, difficult terrain, and there's going to be a lot more people that are going to die on that route than in the current time.
The state of California has new laws that basically local police or state police cannot participate in any ICE, I guess, roundups of migrants, undocumented migrants, while you have the state of Texas, well, they're encouraging law enforcement to participate in these raids, roundups, to deportate, to make deportations.
Yeah, I mean, I think it doesn't really, it doesn't make any sense to be doing these mass deportations. I don't think anyone is going to defend, going after someone who has a violent criminal record, but that's a very, very small percentage of people, and it's really just a false narrative that's being created. I mean, if you watch Trump or some of the news, you would think that there's like convicted murderers that are just letting walk the streets, right? That's not happening. Like ICE is already going after those individuals. So the whole thing is you're going after this ghost that doesn't even exist, but they're using this as a way to implement mass deportations. Right now, they don't have the amount of ICE agents to actually do what they're planning. What I am fearful of is that they're trying to pass this legislation through Congress that would dramatically increase funding to ICE to do that. But this would obviously, it would destroy communities. It would destroy the economy if they do these mass deportations. And I think what a lot of American citizens need to realize is that in some ways, these crackdowns on immigration is a step for authoritarian power. So, and Trump said a lot of things, but one of the things that he's thrown out there is he could even use the military to go after immigrants. And if you start seeing troops in the streets going after migrants, I think that's just a step away, or maybe it's not even a step away, it's the beginning of martial law. And so they're going to use immigration to take over these authoritarian powers. And that's unfortunately what, fascist governments have done throughout history. They find the scapegoats and they use that group to basically take on more and more power.
Lastly, just about an hour from McAllen, there's a huge piece of land that has been offered to build detention space. One side of the coin. The other side of the coin is that Mexico, and through several organizations, whether it's government or shelters, some say they are ready to receive migrants that are deported, but others, like shelters, say no, we're not ready. We don't have the space and the resources, to help out mass migration, deportation.
Right. I think I think this goes for the Mexican government, the Canadian government, the Panamanian government in general, that they should not give in to the threats and tantrums of the Trump administration. I think once you start going down that path and saying, okay, we're going to give in to this because he's threatening to do this, then that's going to just lead to more and more. In the state of Texas, I think, the people of Texas should really wonder what they're getting out of Abbott's working, giving this land and, the Operation Lone Star, is costing the state of Texas billions of dollars, and it's not helping out. It's not helping kids go to school or helping with the infrastructure. It's all just a political game that's going on. And so it's really unfortunate that the state of Texas, that the governor is spending so much money to make a political point rather than actually help the people of Texas. And I hope eventually people realize that they've been played. They're using the fear of immigrants to basically distract from the lack of assistance they're giving people. And I think ultimately it's going to be a way that they're going to try to take more and more control. And so I think that authoritarianism, those who study history, this is not a new thing, right? You saw this with Franco, Mussolini, Pinochet. They are going to use a target, they're going to go after them, and then that's just going to be a way to solidify control. And so, I think even more recently, look at Putin and Russia, and we have a small window to resist that. And if we give into it and let it happen, then I think the democracy falls pretty quickly.
Lastly, what can the regular citizen, know about what's going on, what's going to take place, and what can they do?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen a lot of just discouragement, and I expect even people that the first time that they were like, we're against these immigration changes, we're against these restrictions. It's like, okay, this is happening again. This time I'm just gonna give up. Or I'm like, almost like I'm just gonna give up on the U.S. and either literally leave the country or figuratively just like check out. But I think that's a real dangerous thing to do. I think being involved, and I think there's opportunities to actually push back. I think the best example I can think of was with the child separation policy, that even under the Trump administration, he got so much pressure, and it was an election year, midterm election year, that he kind of backed off. Now there were still other policies that were implemented afterwards, but it's showing that if people actually get involved, they still do have a voice. And I think people need to be more involved than they were even the first 4 years. The first 4 years, there were some checks and balances in place. There's less now. And so if the people are not engaged, if they're not speaking up, if they're not, if they do these mass deportations like they're planning to do next week in Chicago, if there's not like a large public outcry, then I think you're going to see that more and more. And as I was saying before, it's not just going to be unauthorized migrants that lose their rights. It's going to be U.S. citizens that lose their right because it's just going to be part of this authoritarianism that takes over.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Victor.